All right, welcome in everyone. It's time to learn. We're going deep on coal today. Forget those headlines you've seen. We're going way beyond that. We've got a ton of info here ready to unpack what's really happening in the coal world, a global perspective.
Yeah, we're skipping the technical jargon. We're going to look at the big picture, like where does it even come from? How does it go from the mine all the way to, actually being burned? What's it used for? The market, supply, demand, the whole 9 yards. And you know what? The story of coal. It might be a bit more complicated than people think.
It probably is a lot more going on than most of us realize, I'd bet.
Yeah.
Think of this as your crash course on coal, the forces at play in the industry. We've got some fascinating stuff to uncover, so let's dive right in, okay?
Yeah.
Let's start with, I guess, literally where coal comes from the mine. It's more than just digging a hole, right?
Way more, yeah. The earth is, well, it's loaded with coal. I mean, we're talking potential reserves that could last, get this, like over 2,500 years for hard coal alone. That's mind-boggling. But here's the thing, the real challenge, it's not just about what's in the ground, it's how we get it out, right?
Yeah.
And the cost of doing that. It's like finding a buried treasure chest. It's awesome,
Yeah.
but it's useless if you can't actually open it. For example, countries like Australia and South Africa, they've got a lot of coal, but it often needs a good washing to get rid of impurities before it's sellable. They're looking at something like 65 to 80% of the raw stuff actually becoming usable coal after that process. So having a ton of coal down there doesn't mean we automatically have a ton we can use, right?
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to ship all that extra stuff around if we don't have to. And I bet the costs of getting it out of the ground, those vary a lot, right?
Oh, they do, big time. I mean, the cost of mining, it's a major factor in the final price you and I pay, ultimately. Think about surface mining, those huge trucks and shovels they use. There's this massive cost associated with removing what's called overburden. That's basically all the earth and rock on top of the coal seam. They have to move all that first. It's like peeling back layers of an onion to get to the good stuff. We're talking about costs around $2 per cubic meter. That directly impacts the bottom line.
So $2 a cubic meter. Yeah, that adds up fast. So basically, the deeper they got to dig, the pricier it gets just to access the coal itself, right? What about going underground?
Underground mining. That's usually called continuous mining. It can actually have lower running costs once you've got everything set up. But, and it's a big but, the initial investment is way higher. You need specialized equipment. It's a whole different ballgame. And then you've got the safety costs, which, let's be honest, they're significant underground. So yeah, it's a trade-off. Every mining project is unique. You have to consider the type of coal deposit, the labor costs in that region, the geology of the area, and of course, how much money you've got to throw at it.
Right. And safety, obviously, that's a huge factor. Plus, all the environmental stuff that comes with coal. Big part of the equation.
Totes. I mean, there's no getting around it. Coal production can be tough on the environment. Land disturbance, water pollution, dust, methane release, all that's in the mix. Modern mining companies, they're really focused on minimizing these impacts, but it's a constant challenge. It's not just digging up coal, it's doing it responsibly. And that comes with a cost too, of course.
Right, totally. You mentioned coal washing earlier. Could you explain it a bit more? Like, what's the real point of all that?
Oh yeah, so coal washing, that's critical. It's all about removing those impurities, ash and other stuff. It bumps up the quality and what's called the calorific value. That's basically how much energy you get when you burn the coal. Makes a huge difference. Higher quality means better price. More bang for your buck, right? Burns cleaner too. But there's a catch, always is. You get a byproduct from washing called discard. And figuring out how to handle that stuff, that's a whole other issue the industry is tackling. Responsibly, of course. We can't just ignore the waste, right?
Makes sense. Sounds like there's a whole chain reaction with every step, from the first bit of earth they move to what they do with the leftovers. What about coal drying? I remember reading about that. Is that common?
Yeah, it's pretty common, especially when you're dealing with lignite. You might know it as brown coal. That stuff can be super wet. I mean, think over 60% water in some cases. Crazy, right? In Germany, some of their lignite, it's like that. Drying it before you burn it. That's got a couple of big pluses. First off, cuts down on those CO2 emissions because you're not wasting energy burning off all that water. Second, it makes transporting it way cheaper. You're not hauling around all that extra weight, so that's good for the bottom line and the environment. Win-win, right?
Makes sense. So it's mined, processed, maybe dried, and then I'm guessing it's not all just lumped together as one big coal product, right?
Yeah, different kinds, yeah.
You got it. We've got different types. Steam coal, that's mainly for making electricity. Then there's coking coal, that's the stuff they use in steel making. And of course, lignite, that's the brown coal we were just talking about. Oh, and anthracite, that's a harder type with more carbon in it. Each one has its own job to do. Wow, so it's a lot more specialized than most people think. Now, After all that mining and processing, getting this coal to where it's actually needed, that's got to be a huge undertaking, especially when it crosses oceans, right?
Oh, you have no idea. Global steam coal trade alone, back in 2015, we're talking roughly 900 million tons moving around the planet. It's a global dance, really. A few countries are running the show, though. Indonesia, they were top dog, exporting about 40% of the world's coal. Australia was right behind them at 23%. Then you've got Russia, Colombia, South Africa, even the U.S. shipping out coal.
Yeah, that's a lot of coal. I mean, these are massive distances. How does all of it get around?
Well, you've got countries like South Africa. They're heavily reliant on these big, specialized port facilities. Richards Bay Coal Terminal is a prime example. And a lot of South African coal, it's got a higher ash content, so they wash it before it goes onto the ships. But here's the thing, right? Sometimes that demand from other countries, it clashes with what South Africa needs for itself. Their power company, Eskom, needs coal too. So they've got to walk this tightrope, keeping everyone happy both at home and abroad.
Yeah, keeping everybody supplied. Sounds like a tough balancing act.
Yeah.
And I know the shipping costs themselves, they can get wild.
Oh, tell me about it. Transportation, especially those long hauls over the ocean, that's a massive piece of the puzzle in the coal trade. A lot of things affect the price, like the size of the ships. You'll hear terms like Capesize and Panamax thrown around. Those are different classes of bulk carriers. Then there are the routes themselves, like Richards Bay to Europe, that's a popular one, or Western Australia over to China. And like with anything, the global economy, if that's doing poorly, it affects the rates. Freight rates, they can be volatile, man. It can be a wild ride trying to predict where they'll go next.
Is there any way to track those shipping costs to kind of make sense of them?
Well, yeah, there's the Baltic Dry Index. That's kind of the gold standard for measuring overall shipping costs. But for specific routes like the C4 from Richards Bay to Rotterdam or the C5 from Western Australia to Qingdao in China, they each have their own quirks, their own pricing dance. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
So a lot of moving pieces. I bet managing all those price swings is, well, kind of a headache.
Oh, yeah. Big time. And that's why coal derivatives have become so popular. These are financial tools, basically contracts, that companies use to protect themselves against those price swings. It's like insurance for coal. But like anything in finance, it's complicated, and it can actually add to the volatility sometimes. It's a double-edged sword, really. You've got big exchanges like the LME in London, the CME in Chicago, and the Chinese exchanges are getting more and more involved. There's this benchmark price called the API2. It basically reflects the price of coal delivered to Northwest Europe, and it's super important in the derivatives market. It's like the Brent crude for European coal, if you will.
So it's not just about the physical coal itself. There's a whole financial world spinning around it, too. Fascinating. Okay, let's shift gears a bit now and talk about what all this coal is actually used for. Besides just making electricity, what other industries rely on it?
Right, so most people know about the power plants, but coal does a lot more than keep the lights on. It's vital for cement production, for example. The kilns they use to make clinker, the main ingredient in cement, they need intense heat, and coal's great for that. Bituminous coal is the go-to for this. Oh, and here's a little fun fact, Pet Coke. That stuff that's left over from refining oil, it's also used in both power generation and cement. So you see, the fossil fuel world, it's all interconnected.
Huh, that's interesting. So coal is quite literally building our world in a way. Now, what about coking coal? That's for steel making, right?
Exactly. And it's not just any old coal. The quality of the coking coal, it's crucial. They look at things like the ash and sulfur content, how much volatile matter it has, its coke swelling number, they call it CSN, and its coke strength after reaction, or CSR. Steelmakers, they get super specific about the type of coking coal they need, and they'll often blend different types to get the exact properties they want for making coke.
Wow, they really fine-tune it. Are there any other, maybe lesser-known uses for coal?
Oh, for sure. There's coal bed methane, or CBM, for example. It's natural gas, but it's trapped in those coal seams underground. They can extract it as a separate energy source. And then there's some really interesting technologies out there, like coal to liquids and coal to gas, that's CTL and CTG. These are ways to convert coal into synthetic fuels or chemicals. The cool part is they can actually be cleaner in terms of CO2 emissions than burning the coal directly. Lignite, that brown coal, it's particularly well suited for these technologies because of its chemical makeup.
It's amazing how versatile it is. Okay, let's zoom out a bit now. Big picture time. What's the long-term outlook for the global coal market? Supply, demand, that sort of thing.
All right, so global electricity demand, it's not slowing down anytime soon, that's a fact. It's mostly driven by developing countries. They're catching up to the energy consumption levels we see in more developed economies. And even though we're getting better with energy efficiency, the way we're all plugged in these days, the tech we use, it eats up energy like crazy. So the overall demand, it's going up.
So even with all our energy-saving gadgets, we're still using more power. Makes you think. What's the IEA, the International Energy Agency? What's their prediction for coal in all of this?
Well, the IEA, they're saying global primary energy demand is going to keep rising at least until 2040. And coal's going to be a big part of that, about 27%. Here's something interesting. Electricity generation, that's becoming a larger and larger chunk of the total energy we use. And coal, its share within that power generation sector, it's actually increasing globally. Southeast Asia, for example, they're planning on a big expansion of their coal-fired power capacity by 2040.
Wow, it sounds like coal's still king in some parts of the world. What about the big players like China? Where do they fit in?
Oh, China. They're a force to be reckoned with. They're both the largest producer and consumer of coal on the planet. So what they do has ripple effects all over. Their economic growth, it has cooled down a bit from a few years ago, but their economy is so massive that even a little growth means a whole lot of energy demand. And a lot of that is met by coal still. China became a net importer of coal back in 2008, and while the amount they import varies, they'll probably stay a net importer for the foreseeable future. It's also important to note that China is not a monolith. There are regional differences. We're expecting to see a lot more power plants popping up in the western and central regions of the country. They're trying to move away from coal, but realistically, they'll be using a ton of it for decades to come.
What about India? They're another big player, right?
Huge, and they're growing rapidly. India's got this booming industrial sector and a lot of steel projects in the works. They need a lot of coal, both the steam and coking varieties. They'll be big consumers for a while, that's for sure.
What about the developed world? Japan, Europe? How are they impacting this whole picture?
Well, Japan's interesting. They're pushing renewables and nuclear, of course, but they're not ditching coal entirely. They'll probably keep using a decent amount for the foreseeable future. Germany's another story. They've got this energy Wende thing going on. That's their energy transition. They're trying to kick their reliance on coal and nuclear, but it's costing them a fortune. It's not easy. And get this, they're still a major lignite producer. So yeah, different countries, different priorities, different challenges, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a complex landscape. Switching to the supply side, are there any countries that are crucial for coal's future?
Oh yeah, a few stand out. Indonesia. They've got enough coal reserves to keep exporting for over 100 years. Most of it's in Sumatra. But here's the catch in Newbie. Their infrastructure in Sumatra, it's not quite there yet. Plus, they've had some political and, well, let's just say governance issues that have made some investors a bit hesitant. Australia, they've seen their exports go through the roof since the year 2000. They're a big deal in the global market. Russia's become a major supplier to China. Colombia is the main coal exporter in the Americas. And keep an eye on Mozambique. They're emerging as a big player in coking coal, and they might start exporting thermal coal too. Oh, and the U.S. Well, they've had that shale gas boom, so their own coal consumption for power has gone down. They still export coking coal, but their steam coal exports, they're a bit more unpredictable depending on what prices are doing internationally.
So lots of sources, lots of factors affecting things. Sounds like a lot of risk for the coal industry to manage. What are some of the main things they're worried about?
A lot of things keep them up at night. Regional cost structures, those can be all over the map depending on how they mine, what labor costs are like, the geology of the region, the infrastructure or lack thereof. For example, Colombia has actually become cheaper than Indonesia when it comes to exporting steam coal. And trade flows, they're constantly shifting. Demand changes, policies change, shipping costs change. You see things like Russia exporting more to China, and Colombian coal is finding its way to India now. And pricing, well, that's a whole other story. You've got spot prices, long-term contracts, index-linked pricing, plus that whole derivatives market adding to the fun.
And I bet environmental regulations and climate change policies, they're probably the biggest source of uncertainty now, right?
Absolutely. ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance, and all the policies that go with it are a huge factor for the coal industry now. Environmental rules are getting tighter, climate change is a major political issue, and people are more concerned than ever about pollution and the health impacts of burning coal. That's leading to divestment, less money flowing into the industry.
Makes sense. And I imagine the global political landscape, it's got to be a factor too, right?
Oh, yeah. Big time. Geopolitics, it can make or break the coal market. You've got political instability in some coal-producing countries, like South Africa, and policy changes in big consuming countries like China and Indonesia. Any of that can really shake things up. Remember the U.S. oil embargo back in the 70s? That's a prime example of how geopolitics can completely reshape an energy market.
Right. So we've been talking about a lot of challenges and risks, but I know there's another side to this story. Some people argue that coal isn't all bad. Why is that?
Yeah, it's important to remember that. For all the talk about the downsides of coal, it's still a vital energy source for a lot of the world, especially developing countries. They're trying to grow their economies, get their people access to electricity, and for them, coal's still the most affordable and reliable option. Many of these countries, their per capita emissions are still way lower than those in the developed world. So it's a question of priorities. Their focus is on meeting their people's basic needs right now.
Right. So for some countries, it's about getting the energy they need first, and then maybe worrying about emissions later.
Exactly. And another point is that coal, it's pretty widely available. There are lots of countries that produce it, and the market's relatively free. That's a big deal for energy security. Plus, if you look at the estimated lifetime of coal reserves, they're way longer than oil or natural gas. So it's not going away anytime soon.
And there's also some debate about, well, the whole climate change narrative, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a view out there that says all the focus on CO2 emissions from humans, it's kind of overblown. They say natural factors play a bigger role in climate change than we give them credit for. It's not the mainstream scientific view, but it's out there, and it's something to think about.
So if you subscribe to that view, how does it change the way we should approach coal?
Well, they argue that instead of trying to get rid of coal altogether, we should be focusing on making it cleaner, developing new technologies for those power plants, especially in developing countries where they're really needed. They say investing in energy efficiency and sustainable solutions, that's a better approach than just demonizing coal.
Interesting. So maybe we shouldn't be so quick to write off coal. Perhaps there's a way to make it part of a cleaner energy future.
Right. Some people even believe that coal could be a bridge fuel, helping us get from where we are now, heavily reliant on oil, to a future powered by renewables. And did you know that coal-fired power actually uses less water than most other forms of electricity generation? Except for solar and wind, of course. That's a pretty important factor, especially as water becomes more and more scarce.
The water footprint, that's a great point. And we talked earlier about the efficiency of coal burning.
Yeah, and it might surprise you to learn that the average efficiency of coal plants around the world, it's actually gone down in recent years. One theory is that it's because we're not investing in coal technology as much in the West, and we're not supporting those upgrades in developing countries where most of the new plants are being built. It's almost like we're pushing them towards older, dirtier technology by turning our backs on coal. It's a bit ironic, isn't it?
That's definitely something to ponder. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. The world of coal, it's complicated.
It really is. It's a mix of geology, economics, politics, and environmental concerns, all intertwined.
We've looked at how it's mined, transported, how it powers our lives, the global market forces at play. It's a lot to take in.
But hopefully you've come away with a better understanding of it all. It's not a simple black and white issue.
Yeah, I think that's the key takeaway. Coal's role in the world, it's more nuanced than most people realize. And whether we like it or not, it's going to be part of the conversation for a long time to come. So, the learner, what are your takeaways from all of this? What questions are still bouncing around in your head?
Keep digging, keep learning. The world of energy is constantly evolving, and coal's a big part of that puzzle.
Yeah.
Understanding the fundamentals, that's how we make sense of the future, right?
Absolutely. All right, that's all for today. See you all next time.
See you next time.